Episode 90 of the Pilot podcast takes off now.
Hi, my name is Mindy Lindheim, and I'm a regional sales director and demo pilot for Textron Aviation.
What is going on, Avination, and welcome back to episode 90 of the Pilot podcast. My name is Justin Siems, and I am your host. Today's episode is a big one. It is a fan favorite. I have been asked to get her on the podcast for so long, and we finally made it happen. I might have told her to record earlier last year and totally forgot and blew her off, so she forgave me, everyone else forgave me, and she gave me a second chance. I'm talking with Mindy, also known as Schmindy on Instagram. If you don't follow her, you should go follow her now. She has an incredible job. She flies for Textron. She flies demo planes. She's a salesperson for them, and she just has such a cool job where she pretty much flies Barons, Bonanzas, 182s, 172s around just to have fun, go meet up, and go sell some planes. So go ahead and check out her account and listen to this podcast to find out how she got the job she has now. Aviation, if you'd like today's episode, please leave us a review on iTunes. You can find us on our website, pilotthepilothq.com. We have all our social media links there. We also have a link to Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, I want to give a huge shout out to the Patreon of the week. That is Bailey Davis. Bailey, thank you for supporting the podcast on Patreon. It has helped us create this podcast and now YouTube videos. That's right. I released my first YouTube video last week. I'm hoping to do them weekly, have them come out on Wednesdays, the day after the podcast. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be a little bit rough going into it, but we'll make it work. We'll make it happen. YouTube videos are coming strong. I released my first one on my 30th birthday. That's right. Turned 30 now. I'm officially old. Very, very old. But anyways, Aviation, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Mindy. Mindy, what is going on? Welcome to the Pilot podcast.
What's up?
Not much. I'm glad we finally got this scheduled. You forgave me for totally blowing you off last year, which I totally don't remember, but I believe you, and you actually had a receipt to prove that I was in the wrong.
I had evidence.
You sent that quick too. Like you were like sitting on that picture waiting for me to come back.
Yeah, well, you've been on my tail about it. I was like, I didn't blow you off. It was the other way around.
It's so funny. I mean, it's not funny. It's really sad. I apologize. I'm glad that everyone voted yes in your story. So now here we are talking and you have the opportunity to tell your story. So I'm excited.
Awesome. I'm excited too.
Cool. So let's go ahead and start it off. First question I always ask everyone is why aviation? What was the original inspiration for you to get involved with aviation?
Well, I don't have a cool long story or anything. It was just very spontaneous. Growing up, I was always into adrenaline sports and taking a path that not a lot of other people do. So I got into aviation because I originally wanted to go to med school. I started 2 years of pre-med and I was looking at how expensive med school was. So I looked at some military options because if you go in the military, they can pay for part or all of your med school. So I was looking at that, started reading about aerospace medicine. It was like, wow, how cool would that be to like take care of the pilots? And there's certain medicines they can and can't take. Like that would be a really cool like specialty to get into aerospace medicine. And started reading more and more about aviation. It was like, wow, like actually that'd be really cool to fly. So I had a neighbor that's a Delta pilot. So I went to his house one day and just asked him how he got started, how you become a pilot, just some basic questions. And he had told me about Embry-Riddle. So I went and visited. I was living in Orlando. That's where I was born and raised. So I visited the Daytona Beach campus. And within like the next month, I was already enrolled and going to school at Embry-Riddle. It was just very spontaneous. Like, this is what I want to do. Let's go do it.
That's a very quick turnaround from not having any want to be in aviation to enrolling in Embry-Riddle.
Yeah, that's typically my style. I like to just dive in head first. And it just seemed like an awesome opportunity and was able to get in really quickly. So I just took full advantage of it. What
was it about, like kind of doing your research and seeing aviation? Was there anything in particular? Like I know you said it just sounded cool, but was there anything in particular that was like, wow, that's sweet. Like I could just fly? Like, cool.
That's kind of exactly it. There's nothing in particular. I just started reading about airplanes. Like, how cool would that be to be a pilot? I don't know any pilots really, except for that one neighbor. And I especially never met another girl pilot. Like, how cool would that be? So just got into it, very spontaneous and very lucky and happy that I actually liked it and stuck with it.
That'd be awkward.
Yeah, because my first flight in Yeah, my first flight in a small airplane was my first flight lesson. So I was really banking on liking this.
Please, God, let me like this.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people, I feel like maybe not a lot, but there's some people in your situation where maybe they don't have a family member in aviation. All they have is that neighbor, and they go up to them, they talk to them, they kind of get interested. What does someone with a family that's maybe not involved with aviation, how do they receive the news that like their daughter, their son, their kid wants to become a pilot? Like were they shocked? Were they thrown off a little bit? Were they kind of hesitant? Like, that's a lot of money. Are you sure you want to do this?
All of the above. My parents were surprised. My older sister, she's a doctor and she went through med school. So I was kind of tracing her footsteps. That's why I was in pre-med. And so when I told them after 2 years, I was already setting all this stuff up. And I was like, hey, by the way, I want to go be a pilot. Like, what? Like, we were going to have 2 doctors in the family. Now you want to be a pilot?
You're the black sheep. How dare you?
Yeah. No, they were super stoked about it, though. My dad absolutely loves it. He's starting to get more and more in aviation every day, and has expressed some interest in getting his pilot license one day. And my mom at first was more hesitant, just because our family doesn't know anything about it. So she wasn't sure about the safety aspect and all that. But overall, they were both incredibly supportive. They've learned as much as they could from the outside looking in, and it really helped me a lot to get through all of that.
What was, so your mom was kind of hesitant at first. Was there a moment for her where she realized that like she finally gave in? This is what you want to do? Did you really take her on a flight, or was it just kind of over time you talked her into it?
It just took some time. She was never really against it, but I could tell she was hesitant, wasn't so sure. She did think it was pretty cool as well, though. So there was that to kind of lean on. And I didn't take her flying with me for the first time until she backseated one of my instrument flights. So that's after I was flying for over a year. And I think after that, she was fully on board.
Yeah, she's like, all right, she can do this. Good.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What was it about Embry-Riddle that made you want to go there?
Well, it was my first exposure to aviation. It was highly recommended from that neighbor of mine, which I really trusted with his guidance and mentorship. And after I looked into it and kind of poked around online on the different schools and stuff, it just made sense for me, especially because it was in Florida. It was only an hour from where I grew up and I lived, and it's actually a place where we had vacationed a lot when I was little, so a place that was familiar, and so it just kind of fit into my puzzle.
That's cool. So I guess kind of clarifying again, you were on the pre-med track, right?
Yeah.
So were you enrolled in another college already, and then you had to leave to go to Embry-Riddle, or is this before you went to college?
So I got a 2-year degree at a state college called Valencia College in Orlando. And so I completed those 2 years and got my associate's degree. And then I applied to UCF and got into their pre-med program. And it was like, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks before that program started is whenever I dropped out and went to Riddle.
Good thing you figured that out, because after those 2 weeks, it'd be kind of late, right?
Yeah, the clock was ticking.
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, my wife's in medical school right now, so I totally feel the med school track. It's definitely interesting.
Definitely something I'm glad I got out of.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I always thought being a pilot was hard, and the studying was hard, and the amount of content you need to know. But I was watching my wife study and what she has to do and the time commitment that she has to put in. It's like, oh my gosh, you're like a superhuman. There's no way I could do that. And there's no way this compares to aviation at all.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, but it'll pay off one day, maybe.
You would hope so.
Yeah, I know, right? All right, so you are now at Embry-Riddle. You made that decision to go there via the guidance of your neighbor. What's your first overall kind of, you're there? What's your experience like? What are you going through in your mind? What are you kind of telling yourself when you're going there?
Man, it was just so much fun to start flight school and just really get into it. The flight department there was awesome. I got my private pilot license on campus. And after I started to kind of figure out what was what in aviation, since I was so new to it, I just went the Riddle way. But then once I started to figure things out, I decided to go off campus for the rest of my ratings and stuff because it was a lot cheaper. It just was the best financial decision to do that. And I stayed on campus for my degree, of course. And, but yeah, when I first got there, it was just a blast to see especially to see all the students there that knew exactly what they wanted to do with their life, which is so different than any other college. At my previous college, the kids around you, they don't even know what major they want, let alone what career they want. But at Embry-Riddle, it's not even that the guy next to you says, I want to be an airline pilot. He says, I want to be a Delta captain, a Delta 777 captain. Like, the goals are so specific of the kids that go there. And I have a lot of respect for everyone that goes there. And that's why everyone seems to be pretty successful that comes out of there, because they know exactly what they want to do. They do their work, they work hard and get it done. So that was the coolest part about being at Embry-Riddle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny you say that, because I went to Ohio State, went to a big school. It's always, like you said, it's like a typical university. The first 2 years, you ask someone what they want to do, and maybe 20% of them are like, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be whatever. And then there's me and everyone else. It's like, I have no idea what I want to do. It's like, I want to be a professional football player, and then that doesn't work out. And then you're kind of sitting there just thinking about it. But a school like Embry-Riddle, which is so specific, and it's like, all right, you're doing aviation. Now you just kind of figure out what you want to do in aviation. And then you have those people that are very, very much set on the goal of becoming an airline pilot. And then you can also be an engineer. And Embry-Riddle is just much, much more than aviation, or not aviation, much, much more than just flying, which, as I've been doing these interviews, I found that out more and more, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a unique college.
What did you get your degree in at Embry-Riddle?
My degree was in aeronautics.
Okay. What does that entail? Is that like just mainly flying, or is that everything? Or is that other like science classes?
So they have aeronautical science, which means that you're also a part of their flight program. So that's what I started out in. And then once you drop out of their flight program, then it goes to just aeronautics, and it's the same degree. It just means you didn't get all your ratings there. And it's a ton of different courses about aviation stuff. So you take the private to pilot ground course and instrument ground course and all that stuff. And you take engine courses and just anything and everything about aviation. Gotcha.
But your flying is just done to other places.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I guess this is kind of an interesting question. When you decided to, or when someone decides, because I'm guessing quite a bit of people probably make the same choice you did, they just realize it's really expensive. When you decide to go to a different flight school, are you kind of treated different from there on out, or is it kind of just like welcome it and they're not really too worried about that?
Well, the flight department and like the college aviation, where you take like your degree classes, are nearly separate. So nothing changes really. You just stop showing up to the flight department building, and that's about it. So your courses are exactly the same. The professors don't have any idea anyways. So it's very much separated, it feels like. So there was no change.
That's good. I don't know if you'd be like a black sheep and like, stay away from her.
No. I think there's quite a handful of students there that do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can't blame them. I mean, you look at Embry-Riddle and you see the prices, and it's like, oh, I could do this for like a third the price over at the random flight school in the field.
Yeah. And when I started, everyone said Embry-Riddle is the best place to learn how to fly, which is probably true. But once I learned that, there's nothing on your private pilot license or anything that says you went to Riddle, it's like, oh, what the heck? Like, I can go get the same card anywhere else for half the price. So not to dig at Embry-Riddle, if you can afford it or have financial aid to get through it, it's an amazing flight school. And the structure of how I am a pilot today was definitely based off what I learned at Embry-Riddle, but it would just made sense for me to go off campus.
What were the kind of the decisions that you had to make to choose the next flight school? Was there certain things? Was it price? Was it type of plane you could fly? Was it the type of instructors you could access? What was going through your mind when you're actually switching the flight schools?
So I had been thinking about switching, but wasn't fully committed. And I was working in our tutoring center, and my professor that was supervising me came to me one day and said, hey, there's another professor here that teaches in the English communications courses. He has a high school son, and he's asking for someone to tutor his son. And I thought about you because he also owns his own airplane and he's a flight instructor. So he's willing to trade. Yeah, he's willing to trade flight hours for you to tutor his son. Like, done.
Yeah,
sign
you're
me
like,
up.
Excuse me, what?
Yeah. So that's what I did. So that just solidified my decision. So I ended up doing that and doing some tutoring and trade of some flight hours.
Dude, that's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah, it worked out really great.
Did he do the rest of your training, or did you use him for your instrument, or just a couple hours? What was the whole setup?
I bounced around. So for my instrument, I did with him in completion. And then at the time, you had to get your commercial license in a complex aircraft, which he didn't have. And so I went to a different flight school in New Smyrna Beach, and I'm always trying to finagle the financials. So I applied for a job with them in their scheduling department. And since I worked for them, they gave me a pretty good discount on flight training there. So flight trained there, got my commercial. Then I decided I wanted to get my CFI, and American Flyers has a women specific scholarship or grant, if you will, to get your CFI and II. So I applied for that and got it. And so then I went down to Pompano Beach and got my CFI and II.
Dang. So that's pretty cool. I mean, like you hear about how expensive flying is, and obviously it's still expensive even with everything that you had, the scholarships and the discount, but you kind of did everything you could to see how cheap you can make it and how much cheaper you could get it to go. And you even went to the extent of actually getting a job at the place to go work there to go fly. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Anything I had to do to kind of finagle discounts and stuff. And part of my commercial was done at that flight school I worked at. And part of it I did with a friend of mine. And so that was obviously way cheaper than going through a flight school as well. We just rented a plane from a different flight school and used him. So whatever I could get my hands on that I could get some discounts or some scholarships, whatever it was, that's what I went after.
That's funny. Did you find it difficult bouncing between different flight instructors and having different opinions, or did you like having more opinions kind of telling you what you're doing good, what you're doing bad?
No, I loved the different airspaces that I was learning in because, up in Daytona, even Daytona to New Smyrna was different. And then New Smyrna down to Pompano Beach was way different. So it was cool learning different airspaces. I found it extremely valuable to fly with different flight instructors, different aircraft at all these different schools, and different levels of how nice they were and things to look for on older aircraft versus newer ones. So I think the experience of bouncing around was really valuable.
Yeah, one thing you have bouncing around when you're going to different airspaces. I did my private pilot at Ohio State, and I just was there the whole time. Just flew out of Ohio State. I was actually terrified to go anywhere else. I was terrified. I remember they did a cross country in your commercial rating. So you went to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it's like a tiny Charlie airspace. And I would be like terrified even thinking about it. And now you go there and it's like a really quiet airport where there's not much traffic at all, maybe except for like NetJets and some regional airlines. But still, with you bouncing around though, you're kind of forced and you were exposed into these situations to learn how to talk to new towers, to learn how new procedures, because everything's different at different airports. Like at Ohio State, they'd be like, oh, you see 270 in the water towers, like turn right there. It's like down in Florida, they're probably like, oh, you see that pier? Yeah, turn left there. But if you're not familiar with that, then you have no idea without having that experience. So it's actually really valuable to fly in different places and to go to different places as well.
I think so. And you get so almost complacent in your own airspace. And like when you're coming into Daytona, whenever you're right outside the ring, you're going to contact XYZ, frequency, and you know it all by heart. But that's not practical once you get a flying job. You're flying in places you don't know all the time. So how do you find that frequency that you need to contact, and how do you navigate? How do you make sure you're not busting airspace? Because you just start to memorize it whenever you start to fly in the same airspace all the time.
Absolutely. And now you have 4 flights, so you don't have to worry about busting airspace as much.
Yeah, that's 4 flight.
Or your crazy little Garmin setup you got in whatever plane you're flying for Textron.
Yes, the G1000 is my rock.
Absolutely. What was, talking about you being a scheduler at a flight school, how was it kind of balancing having a job in flight training? Did that make it more difficult, or do you think it was just better because you're totally immersed in aviation?
At the time, I was also going to Riddle for some of that period of time. I was finishing up my degree and starting a different one, and so I was doing school and working and flying, and that was just the nature of college, right? You just get so used to doing everything all at once.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just like you got time, you got to figure out what you want to do and go do it, get it done.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day. Like looking back on college, it's like everyone was such robots. How did we not sleep and barely eat and stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning studying or working or playing or whatever? And it's just like, how did we do that?
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's really funny to just think about how having too much time in your hands is almost really bad, especially when you're coming out of high school where you're kind of like your parents tell you what to do, but then you're finally in college and you can spread your wings, you can do whatever you want. And you find yourself with too much time, you can always be like, oh, well, I can push that off till later. But the more you're involved, the more things that you're doing, the more things you have going on, it kind of gives you a guide throughout your day. Like, well, if I have this done, I have to make sure I have to do this by that time. And you're kind of forced to get all your work done and forced to study and forced to do everything you need to do.
So true. I think busier is always better.
Absolutely. So what was your overall kind of favorite flight rating to get? What is it? Your private, your first one? Was it instrument, commercial, CFI, MEI, whatever rating? What was your favorite one?
My favorite one to get was probably my instrument. Just going through that with that mentor of mine, that flight instructor I had, who I hold dear to my heart, is just such a good experience to look back on. And instrument rating is so rewarding to get. It's one of the harder check rides, as you know. So to get that done is just awesome.
Yeah, it was a tough check ride. It's the only check ride I ever failed, so it's definitely not an easy check ride.
No, it's not.
Yeah. What would you say is so different about it? Like, I always tell people it's like almost a different language. Like when you go from VFR to IFR, there's just so many things that you don't know and need to understand. What would you say makes it so much more difficult?
It is. It's much more, black and white than VFR flying. You're at this altitude, at this heading for this amount of time. And me personally, like, that fits my personality type. I'm very analytical like that. So I really enjoyed instrument. It wasn't, put in enough bank to where you keep seeing that tree in your field of sight. Well, how much bank? I don't know. It could be 30. It could be 60. I don't know. Just make sure that keeps happening. So I didn't really like that as much. I appreciate all that much more now, the fun flying. But during training, I like things to be black and white. Like, this is exactly what you need to do. These are the steps you need to do to shoot that ILS or whatever it may be. So that's what I enjoyed.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I never even really thought about that before, but it is kind of nice to have those set in stone rules to know what your limitations are, where you need to go, how you need to go, and what you need to do to get this IFR flight done. And it's really funny doing steep turns, like, how much more bank? Just feel it. It's like, I don't know how to feel it. It's my third flight. Like, what else? Exactly. What do I do?
Exactly. That's how I felt, lost without like instructions almost.
Yeah, it's like, you'll figure it out. It's like, just tell me.
Yeah.
Was there a moment where your instrument rating and your studying just kind of clicked? Because for me, it was more of like an aha moment. Like one day I was just struggling, took a day off, went to go fly, and then boom, like all of a sudden everything just made sense. Was it kind of similar for you?
Absolutely.
Do you remember what it was that made it click?
No, I think it was just time. Like we would do this specific profile for my training every single time. We'd go out, we'd do this hold, we'd shoot this approach, blah, blah, blah. And I had no idea what was going on. And then one day it just all made sense, and forever it has made sense. So I don't know what it was, but there is definitely an aha moment.
All of a sudden you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, I get it. I understand.
Yes, like I felt so stupid before. Like we're literally just, making a racetrack. Like, and I've seen it on the whiteboard so many times. And when you're doing it, it still doesn't make sense. Then one day it's like, oh, this is so much easier than I was trying to make it out to be.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what it is. Sometimes you're putting too much pressure on yourself. You're making it so much harder than it actually needs to be. And it could also be the fact that maybe, like, I know not in your aspect, this probably isn't true, but for some people, for me specifically, my flight instructor and he just didn't explain it the way I needed to be explained. So I went out to outside sources. I went to YouTube and I tried to figure out from all the other free content on there what I needed to do. And with my flight instructor and those sources, it all just clicked. And it was like, bang. And I was like, dang, I know what I'm doing now. Sweet.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Not just learning from just your instructor, no matter how good they are. There's so many resources nowadays, like outside of the books, like you said, YouTube. I want to say it's North Dakota that has some awesome YouTube videos for training. Have you seen those?
No, I haven't. I was going to say, shout out North Dakota.
I'm pretty sure it was them. It was either them or Purdue. I get them mixed up. But I think it was North Dakota, and they have these awesome YouTube videos, and they're very short, and it's just like steep turns, and it has a little cartoonish little airplane, and it shows you exactly how to do them and the steps to take. And I remember seeing those videos, and they were super good. Yeah,
I remember for me, it was holding, and I looked up an M0A video, and I just was like, I finally got it. It's like, this is what I need to do, and I learned it. And now you have Chris Palmer with Angle of Attack. You have Jason with the finer points. You have so many CFIs and so many people that are creating free content online or even paid for content. There's nothing wrong with going to your flight school and also paying whatever it is a month or buying another secondary service for you to figure out what you need to do, because you're only going to learn this stuff one time and you need to learn it the best of your ability. So I definitely highly recommend any kind of other service that you can get or free service to help you along with your training.
For sure.
Yeah. So what was, so now you're training, like you said, you went to the you were a scheduler, you worked at your flight school, you got your MEI. What was kind of your goal once you got all your ratings? Where you're like, all right, I need a time build. I need to go to the airlines as fast as possible. Or you're trying to find every other avenue to build your time and to do it, to make your way in aviation?
My goal was corporate. I've never really had my eyes set on the airlines. When I first started, I kind of thought that was the only option. And definitely going to Embry-Riddle too. That's their specialty. So that's kind of what you're exposed to. So as I spent more time at Embry-Riddle and looking at pilot jobs and stuff, I started to look at military options. That seemed pretty cool. And there's air med and firefighting and all these other pilot jobs that weren't the airlines. And so that got me really intrigued. And so I looked at some different corporate aviation stuff, and there's one corporate class, at least when I went at Embry-Riddle. So I took that course, and it was a lady professor who worked all her career in corporate aviation, and the whole class was just exposing you to different corporate flight departments and how you should get into them and all that type of stuff. So that really opened my eyes to wanting to be a corporate pilot. So I got my CFI and II, kind of because I thought I had to. I didn't really know how else you were supposed to time build. I'm really happy I have it now, but I didn't use it very long. So I got that because I knew I'd have to get hours. That was just, the easiest way to do it. And I do like to teach, so it kind of all worked out for a little bit. But yeah, I didn't ever want to go to the airlines, and I wanted to go corporate, but I wasn't set on anything in particular. I was very open-minded.
Was there anything specific you didn't like about the airlines?
I don't know. I think it's just that style of flying. My personality just doesn't really fit in the airline world, I don't think. Just the way that they train, the way that they operate, all that type of stuff. Just isn't my style. And I absolutely dread going through Hartsfield and those in Chicago O'Hare and all that, as a passenger. And I just cannot imagine having to show up there for work all the time.
Right. And like you said, that's not your personality. It's not your style. It doesn't mean to say for someone listening to this, that's not like something that they want to do. That doesn't mean it's bad. Like that's why aviation's so great. There's so many different options for other people to do. It's like you can go corporate, you can work for Textron, you can teach a school at Embry-Riddle and still be in aviation or be a flight instructor. It's just like there's so many things that you can do. So it's definitely really cool that you were able to see that and you were able to go after it.
Yeah, and it's always tempting because the airline job is such a great job. Like, not to bash airlines at all, it's just not my personality type. And even to this day, I know how much I would hate it, and it still is a tempting career choice. And people call me and want to talk me into it all the time. And I sit down and think about it. It's like, I know I would hate that. Like, I really like what I got going on.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're a Delta 777 captain, you can be making like $400,000 working like 2 times a month.
I guess it's just not for me.
Yeah, I get told the same things. All my friends are like, "Wait, why are you doing corporate? Why aren't you at the airlines?" It's like, I mean, I like what I'm doing, man. It's good. And they just like can't understand it because there's such a the industry that we're in, there's like, it's just so airline biased and so airline focused. I feel like that I still feel like you're not a real pilot unless you're flying it for the airline sometimes.
It's honestly frustrating.
Yeah. Maybe we'll change it. We'll see. Or we'll both end up at the airlines and fall to it.
Whatever. More for us.
Yeah, right. There you go. That's funny. So obviously you took that class. Obviously you realized you needed still to build your hours. So you became a flight instructor. How long did you flight instruct for?
Only, I don't know, maybe like 4 months.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, hardly any time. And the tricky part was, I took a year off of school to get all my ratings, like after I got my degree done. So I still stayed at Daytona Beach in that area. I was working for that flight school, getting all my ratings done, all that type of stuff. And then Embry-Riddle called and asked me to come back and get my master's, that they were going to pay for it. And I could just take a job at Embry-Riddle. That was kind of the trade-off. And so I was like, absolutely, I'll come back if you guys are going to pay for my master's. So I did that. And I went back to Riddle, and I was a full-time student, and I had to work for them. That was the payoff. And it was only part-time, though. It wasn't a lot. And so then I had my CFI and II, and no one would hire me. No one wanted a part-time flight instructor. And so that was very difficult. I got so frustrated because I know how much all these flight schools were hurting for flight instructors. And this was I don't know, 6 years ago now. And they were hurting for flight instructors, but they wouldn't hire me part-time. And I was willing to work whatever hours, whatever days that they wanted, just not when I was in school. And so they weren't about that. So I went back to that professor that taught me my instrument, who had become a mentor of mine, and told him, like, I'm so frustrated. I worked so hard. I got here and now I can't even find a job because I decided to go back to school. And he's like, listen, let's just make our own flight school. So that's what we did. So he had the airplanes. Yes, he had airplanes, and he had a couple students that he was teaching just kind of through word of mouth, but he was a professor for his full-time job. And so we just started this little flight school called Air Daytona, and it was out of Spruce Creek, which is a private flying neighborhood down there. Super fun community air park hangar home style thing. And so I taught out of his hangar, and he had a G1000 172. So that's what I was used to. I got my instrument in it, and we started this little flight school. And it kind of became my niche to start teaching Embry-Riddle professors. I had all adult students. I had no young students. Not because I didn't want it to, but it just started by word of mouth at Embry-Riddle that we started this little thing out of Spruce Creek, and a lot of the professors that wanted to learn how to fly thought that was pretty cool and started coming to us. So we had a little niche. And then a couple months later, I got picked up by Textron. So
is the flight school still around, or is it gone?
Not by the name of Air Daytona or anything, but he still teaches out of that plane just himself.
That's cool. How did you hook up with Textron? How did you make that happen?
So when I was doing my master's, part of that job that I had to do for them entailed putting together a symposium for a bunch of aircraft manufacturers and airliners. And when they all came in for this yearly event that Embry-Riddle would host, they would talk about how we should be training pilots and different safety aspects we should be looking out for, and just kind of getting everyone together. And all the aircraft manufacturers came, like Textron. And so Textron and Piper and Cirrus, and they all came, and they all flew in these brand new airplanes. They were on the ramp at Embry-Riddle. And one day for a lunch during the symposium, we went out there and they had a static display of the planes. And so that's when it really caught my attention, because I had met these guys that were working for the companies and talked a little bit about their jobs, but it wasn't too intriguing. But then when we were out there by the new airplanes and getting that new airplane smell,
I like this.
Wait a second. So you just flew this new airplane here to come to this meeting, and what, you just fly it back? And they're like, yes, that's what we do. Like, we go to meetings and symposiums and we do demos, and we sell airplanes, but we get to fly them too. I was like, okay, now we're talking.
Sign me up.
Exactly. So I got to talking to the guy at Textron, and he was telling me all about his job. Like, this sounds incredible. And he told me that there was an opening coming up that they normally don't hire externally, but they don't really have anyone lined up for it. So it'd be a shot in the dark, but he was happy to put my resume through if I wanted to. And so I did. And 2 weeks later, I was out in Wichita and I interviewed and I got the job. And so then the rest is history.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What was the interview process like? Was it kind of a fly-in? Did they want to see your flying skills, or just want to get to know you?
No. So for sales, you don't even have to be a pilot. So being a pilot was just a plus, but not a requirement. And so it started out with a quick phone interview with HR just to make sure you were legit and actually wanting to apply for this job. And then you get another phone interview with people actually in your department. And then they had some pre-work for us. So they sent over some like situational stuff, some different situations that you would encounter when you're selling airplanes. And, Joe Smith wants to buy a new airplane. He's got this many family members going here. What would be the best? How would you pitch it to them? So there was some pre-work involved. So you had to like make a presentation for them and stuff. And then once you get through all that stuff, they invited me out to Wichita, and it was like a 2-day interview process, day and a half, I guess. So it was a dinner with like our regional vice president, and there was like maybe 8 or 9 people at the first dinner with just you that are interviewing, and they just want to get to know you. And then the next day you kind of do some touring around, some meeting people that would be in your department and stuff like that. And then you do kind of a board style interview. I think it was me. And then on the other side, there was maybe, 5 or 6 people that interviewed me, like a board interview.
Yeah. Was that pretty intimidating? Sitting there with
for sure.
Yeah, you're like, hi.
Yeah, and that was like my first big girl interview. So I didn't know what I was doing. So luckily they had mercy on me.
Yeah, that's really funny. And then so after those 2 days, is that when you got the offer and you decided to join up?
Yeah, they sent me home with an offer and gave me something like 2 weeks, 10 days or 2 weeks to think about it. And so brought it back and thought a lot about it and decided to take the job.
So you said that for sales, you don't have to have a pilot license. You don't have to be a pilot. How is their job different than if they can't? So obviously I'm guessing when you're selling a plane, you have the ability to go take them up and kind of show them what it can do. When it gets to that point in the sale, if you're not a pilot, do you pass them off to another pilot, or how does that normally work?
Yeah, so you don't have to be a pilot. It's just coincidence, I guess, that all of our people on our sales team happen to be pilots, but not everyone are checked out to fly for Textron. Because they have you have to be a commercial pilot, and at least right now they want to have at least 500 hours to be able to fly the Textron planes. And then there's a process to get to a point where you're checked out to be a demo pilot, which is different than just being able to fly our company planes. So if you're not a pilot and you're in sales, we have a dedicated piston sales team that's based in Wichita. And whenever you're ready for a demo, you just work with our dispatch team and they'll dispatch a plane out with a demo pilot that'll take them up.
When you get hired into Textron, and this is kind of what you're looking at, is there kind of a ladder that you go up in your career? Do you start with the 172? Do you build your way up to the multi, to the Baron? And then do you go up to the latitude or the longitude or whatever eventually? Or is it kind of you stick in the pistons, you stay in the pistons forever and you kind of just stay there? Or how does that look like?
It kind of depends on your goals. At Textron, we have a piston dedicated team. So whenever you work on the piston team, you sell the 172, the 182, the Turbo 206, Bonanza, and Baron. That's the pistons that we produce right now for Cessna Beach. And, there's a separate sales team that sell the jets and stuff like that. And their dynamics a little bit different. But it just depends on your goals. Some people on our team have been selling planes in the piston department for 30 plus years because they absolutely love the piston side. And some people have jet aspirations and want to move up into the jet. So it just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's cool that you have options because obviously if you fall in love with a 172 or a 206, you can just kind of stay there. And the longer you're there, probably the easier it is for you to sell that plane to someone because you just absolutely love it.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of passion in the piston side and the GA side. So that's why I think a lot of people like to stay in the piston department because it's not just a business transaction. It's people's lifelong dream to have a new airplane.
Yeah. So what would you say is the number one seller for the piston planes you guys have?
The number one seller is definitely the Skyhawk, our 172. It's the most popular piston trainer in the whole world. We've made over 40,000 of them. So that is definitely the most popular.
It's probably pretty easy to sell that. Just be like, look at its reputation, look what it's been used for, and other flight schools trust it. So you should too.
Pretty much. And the cool thing about the Skyhawk and the Cessna line in general is that since there are so many out there, there's so many people that can work on them. Like finding maintenance is really easy. Finding flight instructors for those planes are really easy. So it just makes ownership pretty easy in general with so many of them out there.
So that's your favorite, or that's the most popular plane. What's your favorite plane that you have in the fleet?
My favorite plane is the Baron. That's because I've gotten my multi a little over a year ago. So I just got checked out to fly our Baron a couple months ago. And I've just been eating it up. The Baron is such a cool airplane.
The Baron looks pretty sweet, I'm not gonna lie.
It is awesome.
My favorite multi-piston I've ever flown, I've only flown a Seneca. Well, I've flown a Seneca, an Aztec, an Aero Commander, and a 310 R model. And the 310 is my favorite by far. So it's still the 310 is my favorite, but I've never been in a Baron. I've never flown a Baron before. So it looks like it'd be pretty cool.
The 310s look like they're fun to fly. I've never flown before, but just when they're on the ramp, they've got some major ramp presence.
They have huge ramp presence. And everywhere I'd take it, there'd be like some old guy or someone coming up being like, is that an R model? It's like, I could tell that from the road. They'd like literally like pull off the road, see me land, be like, let me look at that R model. It's like, let me get inside. It's like, whoa, hold up, bro. Calm down.
As he's already sitting inside.
I know, right? Yeah. As he starts the engines and taxis away. It's like, no. Yeah, the R model has huge ramp presence. It's just a good looking plane.
Yeah, they sit so proud.
Yeah, they do. The wingtip tanks look good too. It's a good plane. But I guess the Baron's all right too.
Yeah, it's all right.
What do you love most about the Baron?
Just multi-engine flying in general is just a new allure for me. So that's been fun, but it has so much power, and its single engine performance in particular is amazing. Like when I was going through my training with it, it not with customers or anything, but just internally when we're doing training to get checked out to be a demo pilot on and stuff like that, we do actual shutdowns on the engines, and we shut it down, and it felt like the plane didn't even know. And yeah, you can just put back on the autopilot and the yaw damp, and it's just flying along like nothing even happened.
That's pretty cool. That was not the case in the R model I was flying, because it was probably like 30 years old. The engines have probably never been changed. You lose an engine on the other side, and it's just like, uh-oh, this isn't good.
Yeah, no, it's pretty easy to clean up the Baron. Obviously, in training, you see it coming, so that makes it a lot easier. But there's rudder trim and all that stuff to help you out. And once you get it settled out and you're back in level flight, it truly feels like nothing happened. You can make left turns, right turns towards the out engine, away from it, and it flies like a dream.
Who are your typical customers that you have? Would you say there's like a one type of customer that you always had? You know, like maybe like a single person that's made their money and just wants to buy an airplane, or is it more families? Is it people with businesses? Is there like a set type of customer that you have?
The customers on the piston side are successful business owners, and of all caliber. We have small business owners, large business owners, like big corporate CEOs that you've heard of, and CEOs of little companies that you've never heard of and never will hear of. So it's successful business guys who also happen to be a pilot or want to be a pilot. So it is very uncommon to get someone who's looking at a 182 that has no aspirations to be a pilot and is not a pilot. You don't really find people that are hiring pilots for Skylanes.
Right, no.
So it'd be a little weird. Maybe sometimes once in a blue moon, you'll find that on a Baron purchase, but typically on the piston side, and that's what kind of makes it difficult to sell pistons, is you have to find someone who's successful, who has the money for it, who also happens to be a pilot or wants to be a pilot. Those two things both have to be there.
That's tough. Yeah, that'd be tough to cold call people and be like, I'm not a pilot, I don't want to fly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really funny. Like, aren't you that Mindy girl from Instagram? Yeah, I'll buy a plane.
That'll be the day.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. When Pilot to Pilot makes it big and you have to cold call me, I'm going to be like, are you Schmindy from the Instagram? That's really funny. It's like, no, I'm going with Cirrus. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. What, so is there a progression that you see? Do people usually like you said, the Skyhawk, obviously for training aircraft, for flight schools, do you think that, or do you see they kind of move on from there eventually? Do they move on from a Skyhawk to maybe a 206 to a Baron to the King Air to the Jet? Is that kind of like a natural progression, or do they usually buy a plane and stick with the plane?
There's kind of a mix of both. And that's the cool thing about Textron and working for Textron, is that we don't just have pistons, and we don't just make jets, and we don't just make turboprops. So we make all of them, which is really cool because some of our customers take full advantage of our whole product line. And it's really kind of neat to see it come full circle sometimes. Like we've had customers that bought a new 172, learned how to be a pilot, got up into the 182, had that for a few years, traded in for the Bonanza, and then they get their multi and the Baron, and then they're in King Air stepping into the jet line. And to see that come full circle is the coolest thing. And then there's other people that just, the Skylane fits their mission, and that's all they need, that's all they want, that's all they prefer. And they buy a Skylane, and then they'll trade it in for a new one every year in some cases, or every couple of years, and just keep freshening it up to get the latest avionics and stuff.
I was going to ask, when you sell a plane, is it usually a brand new plane, or do you do a lot of used plane sales too?
I only do new planes.
Okay. New plane smell only.
Yeah. Every once in a while we get a used plane that we took in on some sort of deal. We normally don't take in trades, so that's incredibly rare for that to happen. So for the most part, just new planes. What's your favorite part of your job? My favorite part of the job is probably just having such a flexible schedule, and kind of, it almost feels like you get to run your own business in this job because we get dedicated territories. So for instance, I cover Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. And what happens in those states and how I choose to run my territory is completely up to me. And, if I want to go do demos from Tuesday to Friday, then I go do demos from Tuesday to Friday. Or if I want to make a meeting in Birmingham, I go to Birmingham and have that meeting. They don't tell anyone, any of the sales directors, like, oh, you need to go do this demo or you need to go meet with so-and-so. Like, that's all on you. So it's a lot of responsibility, but for me, that's what keeps it challenging and keeps it fun, that I get to kind of be in charge of it.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And you definitely have the authority to kind of, like you said, make your own schedule and do what you want. You'd be like, oh, there's tornadoes in Birmingham. I'm going to not go there today. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Exactly. And that's the cool thing about, flying for Textron on demos, is that I'm sure that didn't you used to fly cargo?
Yeah, all the time.
So I'm sure you ran into a lot where there was terrible weather and your operator is saying you have to go. Like, it's not an option. You're going.
Yeah.
And with Textron, obviously I'm not going to be demoing aircraft in even IFR weather. That's just not a good demo. So it's usually beautiful days out when I get to fly. And then if it's not a demo day, if I'm just using the company aircraft to go to a meeting or something and it's IFR out, and it's just whatever I'm comfortable with. And Textron understands that. And we're all in unison on what we can and should and shouldn't be doing. And so it's just your personal minimums on when you want to go fly.
So it's almost like you have a Textron plane, like that's your own plane, and you get to use it for whatever you want for business reasons, right?
Kind of. It's
That's
kind of
cool.
like a company car, but a company plane. But we, like, for instance, I'll have a 182 for a couple weeks, and we do a lot of like trading planes around with our territory neighbors, what I call it. So there's another girl that runs the Carolinas in Tennessee, and maybe she'll have a 206 and I need that for a demo. So we'll meet halfway and swap airplanes, or if the Florida guy needs some help down there with the Baron, I'll run down there and help him. So it really goes out of just my states too, but we swap airplanes around. So I don't always have the same airplane or even the same serial number of 182s. Like a couple different kinds will come through the hangar, but pretty much always have an airplane.
That's cool. That's gotta be fun. It's gotta be pretty cool. Be like, I'm just gonna go take the Baron up to, wherever. Got a business meeting real quick.
It's fantastic because it feels like yours, except you don't have to pay for it, because it's on you to find a hangar for it. It's on you to make that lease. The company pays for it, but you have to get all this stuff set up. And whenever it hits, it's 100 hours. It's up to you and your responsibility to make sure that that plane's getting in the shop and getting its oil change, and you're hiring someone to detail it and stuff like that. So if it's in your hands, you treat it like it's your own airplane.
That's cool. So I was just about to ask that. I was like, are you out there doing oil changes in the plane, or do they want other people to do them for you? Or?
No, we set that up. We do have a maintenance department, of course. We have in-house maintenance when the planes are in Wichita, and usually we try to make it work out that way where they're hitting those intervals when they're in Wichita. That way we can keep it in-house. But if it's out in the field, then we just set something up and get it done.
How would you go about, it's like someone's listening to this right now, someone's like, I want to do what she does. What would you recommend? How would you recommend them get involved with Textron?
Oh, this is the worst question because I feel so useless. There's not a set path to get into aircraft sales. I wish there was something more defined, but there's really not. The biggest advice I give people is, if you're looking to get a new aircraft sales, whatever manufacturer catches your eye, apply for any job that'll get your foot in the door with them, because, most manufacturers, at least the Textron, hires internally for their sales jobs 99% of the time. At least that's where they're at right now. But if you can get into anything, like I have a coworker on my piston sales team that came from finance. I have one that came from being a sales associate on the jet side, or I have one that came from parts sales, or one that came from the Collie props. Like, they kind of pull from everywhere, like people that are interested and qualified and make the cut, but they normally hire internally.
Is there a lot of turnover in these jobs, or do they usually, once the job's up and filled, it's going to be filled for a while?
Yeah, no, there's not a lot of turnover.
It's all about timing.
Yeah, pretty much. And so along with getting your foot in the door, you also have to be qualified for it. You have to network your way in. You have to be a little bit lucky. So the stars have to kind of align. But I'm not saying it's not possible, but the biggest recommendation I can give to someone is to get your foot in the door with whatever company. And for Textron, that means you could be a demo pilot. A piston demo pilot is an entry-level job at Textron. So you could be a demo pilot. That'd be a really cool way to learn the products and start flying the products and then transfer into sales if you wanted to. And then you get to continue flying. Or if you want to go work in pre-owned sales, then start fairing pilots for a dealer or something that's by you, and just get your foot in the door somehow and let it be known what your end goals are.
Yeah, that's good advice. I never even thought about the fairing part. That's really good.
Yeah.
What, so obviously you love aviation, like aviation's a part of your life, and you live in an actual air park now, right?
I do. It's awesome.
That's so cool. You want to talk, I like aviation. I love aviation, but I've never even thought about living in an air park.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. I just never have. I've never really been I've never even really been a part of one, been to one, flown in one, been there when anyone is flying. So I don't really even know much about an air park. Talk a little bit about it.
Oh my gosh, you have to come over. Okay. So at our air park, we have 24 lots, I want to say. So it's a smaller one. It's a 3,000 foot grass strip. There's just two taxiways parallel to the runway, but nothing is paved. The only thing that's paved in here is our actual roads, and in some instances that is a taxiway.
It's awesome.
Yeah, no, but it's awesome living in an air park. Ours is pretty quiet for the most part. I'd say about half of the people that live in here still actively fly. The other half are older and are retired Delta pilots or retired maintenance guys or whatever. So everyone here has an aviation theme, at least. But like our rule in the neighborhood, and for most air parks, I'm sure, is that if your hangar door is open, that anyone can come in and say hi and hang out and have a beer. And so if you see a hangar door open and you just want to go hang out, you just pop right in, and people are usually sitting in there in their lawn chairs and just talking about whatever or watching airplanes. So
swapping airplane stories.
Exactly. So it's a really fun community, and it's been awesome for me because my husband is a controller for Atlanta Center, and we run practically opposite schedules.
Oh no, that's the worst.
Yeah, his days off are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and my days off, where I'm not traveling, is typically the weekends, with, exceptions to fly-ins and stuff. So we miss each other a lot, and we see each other in passing for the most part. So it's really cool to be here and have automatic friends. And if I'm here alone on a Saturday, all I got to do is go outside, and people are out there working on airplanes, flying airplanes, their hangar doors are open. So it's nice to always have friends like in walking distance.
Yeah. Are you guys going to fill your hangar with some planes soon?
Yes. We are fostering 2 cubs right now.
Okay. I like it. I like fostering cubs. That'd be fun.
Yes. And so one of the Piper cubs in there is a friend of ours. And in turn of hangar rent, I get to fly the plane. So it's a pretty sweet deal. Thank you, Ryan Hunt. And we're in the process of selling our old house. This house that came available that we bought was through an estate, and it was time sensitive, so we didn't have time to just sell our house and get into this one the traditional way. We just had to jump right in, take it if that's
kind of
what we
terrifying.
Yeah, yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
So we have a big relief coming up. Crossing my fingers at the end of this month if everything goes well, and once that house is sold and off our books, I'm hoping that we'll get our own plane sometime by the summer.
Are you able to sell yourself a brand new Cessna Textron product, or do you have to go through someone else? Is that like a conflict of interest?
I don't know. I don't know that anyone has ever done that. The employee discount isn't that great.
Yeah. Come on, Textron.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. That's really funny. Going back to, I guess I'll bring up one question. Going back to your husband being in aviation, when you guys met, was he in aviation already, or did you influence him in being in aviation?
We met at Embry-Riddle.
Okay, so he definitely was in aviation then.
Well, yeah, but kind of like me, his family's not in aviation either. And so he plays baseball, and he was on Embry-Riddle's baseball team. And that is the 100% reason he was at Riddle. He had no idea about aviation. his mom, sorry, Kevin, his mom signed him up for his major and just thought that would be like a cool controller thing. He didn't even pick it himself, but
That's
when
hilarious.
he started going to classes, he thought it was pretty cool and fell in love with it too. So when he graduated, we applied him to the FAA, and after some time, finally got him through, went out to Oklahoma City for his training, and then he got placed directly into Atlanta Center.
That's awesome. He's going to have to come on the podcast now and defend himself from that. So tell him he's got an hour. He needs to set aside an hour and come talk to me.
Such a mama's boy.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, she did a good job, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
It worked out for the best.
My mom probably wouldn't pick something that cool. She's probably listening to this, so I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. Total joke. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the schedules are opposite now, like you said, but in the future, as his seniority gets better, it's just only going to improve, right?
Yeah, but it's a long road. So the weird thing about controllers is that seniority doesn't get you any better hours or anything. All controllers of every seniority level work every shift. So they work morning shifts, night shifts, overnight shifts, the mid shift. So that doesn't get you anything. Seniority gets you better days off. So his days off, like I said, are Tuesday, Wednesday, because we are bottom of the totem pole. And it'll be, we would guess, probably somewhere around 8 years. So he has the weekends off. So it's a long road. Yeah.
Holy smokes. That's a long time.
We do what we can.
Yeah.
Having opposite schedules is definitely difficult, but we're really good about making time for each other and keeping each other updated on where we are and what we're doing, because there's a lot of times where he'll head off to work and then I get a pop-up trip out to Mississippi. I'm like, hey, gotta go for 3 days. I'll be back. It's like, dang. So it can be difficult, but we're figuring it out.
And that's the only way to do it. You have to take it day by day. And I mean, obviously, you both are in aviation. You understand how the aviation world works, and it's tough. I mean, it can be tough on relationships, and it's just something you like you said, you just gotta be okay with being like, I gotta go to Mississippi. I gotta do my job. Be like, all right, well, I'll see you when you get back, hopefully. You know?
Yeah, and that's the only way it works, at least for us, I'm sure, is that we're both in aviation. We both understand each other's schedules and why we have to do what we're doing. It's not because I want to get away from him for 3 days. It's just because I got to go work. So we understand each other, and it is really cool both being in aviation, especially a pilot and controller, because I can come home and be like, why the heck did I get vectors around today? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, well, this was going on. I'm like, oh, okay. That makes sense.
No, just a terrible controller. I don't know why.
Yeah.
You get priority handling in Atlanta Airspace now?
Honestly, yes.
I mean, you should. That's the perks of being a wife to a controller.
I guess so. Like when we talked to each other on the radios for the first time, that was the coolest full circle moment I think I've ever had. I got so excited, like almost so nervous to key up. I got passed over to center and I heard his voice when I switched frequency over. Like, oh my God.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Did you guys have like a conversation? You're like, all right, I'll see you at home. What are we making for dinner?
It's exactly what happened. Yes.
Other pilots are like, get off the radio.
No, they loved it.
That's awesome. No, it's really cool. I mean, it's like going back to relationships in aviation. It's definitely something, it might be easier because you both are in aviation. It's definitely something that's tough. You have to find the understanding husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend that can understand what you're going through, because aviation comes first a lot of the times. There's just nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter if you're a pilot, if you're in maintenance, if you're whatever. There's always been a time where aviation, your job is going to inconvenience your relationship, and you got to find a way to get over that. It's just part of aviation.
For sure. And most aviation jobs like yours, I'm sure too, like you got to work holidays and nights and weekends, and it's very trying, but so rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And you just got to find the right person for it, and they're out there.
Yeah.
All right, I have a couple more questions for you, then I'll let you go. One, I just want to ask you about your Instagram and Textron. Like, obviously, you have a pretty good following on Instagram. So, has there been any interaction with Textron? Are they okay with you to just like post whatever you want, or have they kind of have no idea and they're just kind of letting you do your thing?
I don't want to speak for Textron, but to my understanding, they love it and love the exposure. My boss in particular is very supportive of it, understands, what social media is today, and that our buyers, even our buyers today are on Instagram. Like once I started to get a following, it was kind of amazing to see our even jet buyers, latitude, longitude buyers that are on Instagram and following the content that I put out there or messaging me about stuff or commenting on stuff. So I started to track it and I showed it to Textron. They're like, holy cow, like this is awesome. Keep running with it. So
you should be like, hey, you want to pay me a little more if I get one?
Listen, I'm trying.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, really no, funny. It's just been like a fun hobby at first. I mean, it still is. I don't make any money off of Instagram. It's not really the goal. It's just fun to show people, hopefully, that were in my shoes a few years ago, that airlines is not the only option and that GA is so fun, even as a hobby. Even if your career isn't in aviation, it's something else. To have GA as a hobby is incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. And for someone listening to this that doesn't know your Instagram name, go ahead and say it so they can follow you and find you. It
is Schmindy. It's SCHMIIINDY. I feel so silly saying this.
Every time I see your name, I was like, Schmindy.
Schmindy.
It's really funny. All right, I have a couple rapid fire questions for you. Where I'm just going to ask a bunch of random aviation questions, and you just say the quickest and first and fastest response you can possibly think of.
Oh, I feel nervous.
You should be nervous. It's going to be tough.
Okay.
All right. I'll keep it easy. Actually, I don't know what question was. Let's see. What's your favorite airport you've ever flown to?
My airport.
What's your least favorite airport you've ever flown to?
Any class Charlie or Bravo.
Bravos are great. Bravos know what they're doing, and I love it because they're just like when you're getting vectored around in ILSs and doing all that stuff, they know exactly what to do, when to do it, how to do it. So take it back. No, I'm just kidding. Who in the industry would you like to meet most? They could be dead or still alive, however, just your favorite kind of someone that's had a lot of influence on your career that you haven't met.
I don't know if this had the most influence, but it would just be cool to meet Amelia Earhart. And, everyone wants to know what happened.
I would say the living one or the other one?
The other one.
Yeah. I guess I asked you this earlier, but I'll ask you again. What's your favorite thing about aviation?
My favorite thing is probably the places that you go that you never even knew existed.
What's your favorite flight you've ever had?
My first one.
What is something you wish you knew before you started becoming a pilot?
That airlines were not the only option.
Very true. All right, I don't know how often you do this. I don't know after your airline, but just say in your instance, you do a lot of FBOs. There's obviously a lot of times where maybe you're getting fuel and you're hungry, you need to get some food, you need to bring your own food. What's your go-to kind of crew car FBO food that you want to go get whenever you land?
Oh gosh.
You're in the South, so there's only one acceptable answer.
I know you want me to say Chick-fil-A.
I was thinking Chick-fil-A. So there's two. There's Chick-fil-A and like a local barbecue place. Those are really the only two acceptable answers. But I guess you're not in the Carolinas, so that's the best barbecue. So I don't know. You can go.
Yeah, no, Chick-fil-A is a solid go-to because I feel like every Chick-fil-A you go to is pretty consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
And they're based here in Atlanta at my airport.
Really?
Yeah, at Falcon
cool.
Field. Yeah.
They cut me off one time when I was doing my training in Monroe. Their jet cut me off. They're handing out. The only reason why I knew it was because they're handing out free Chick-fil-A gift cards when we landed.
Did you get one?
No, because I went to the flight school. I know, jerks. What's your favorite type of flying? Would you rather fly IFR, VFR?
For work, IFR, and for play, VFR.
Nighttime or daytime?
Daytime.
Mountains, beach, or city? Would you rather fly over?
Beach, like island flying.
What's your favorite approach you've ever flown?
My favorite approach is probably into Heaven's Landing, which is a private airport up in North Georgia. Just adore that place, and it's in the mountains, and it's just such a very, very cool airport.
Place is pretty cool. I've never been, but I've seen your stories, and it makes me jealous every time.
Yes, it's an adventure every time.
I don't think the latitude could fit.
Yeah, it's a pretty long runway.
Oh, really?
Just kind of thin. Yeah, there used to be like a Falcon base there.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Let's see. What do I got? What's your favorite airline livery?
Hawaiian.
Are you more of an Airbus or Boeing girl?
Ooh, I don't prefer either. I don't like airlines. We've been over this.
But you can still like the planes.
I mean, I have no preference.
All right,
I really...
fair enough.
Sorry.
What's your dream airline? Or sorry, what's your dream airplane to fly?
I say so many airline questions.
Yeah. I misspoke.
Dream plane to fly is probably something like a Twin Otter on floats or something like that.
That's sweet. Would that be your dream plane to buy too, to own?
No, I just have a desire to get my twin seaplane. I know I'll never use it, but it'd just be such a cool rating to have.
I would agree. That would be a good one to have. Do you have a favorite city to overnight in?
Nashville.
Okay, that's a good one. All right, those are all the rapid fire questions. You survived. Congratulations. My last question for you is, someone's listening to this podcast, maybe a young girl is listening to this podcast, and they see you, they follow you, they want to do what you do. You have inspired them to be a pilot. What are kind of 3 tips? It doesn't have to be 3, just a couple tips and tricks that you'd tell them to do to put into their training or to get started in their training?
I would say 3 tips to start to get into training.
Just do a 3 tips, motivation, whatever, for just a young person, young lady, young man getting into flying.
I would say don't quit whenever you hit a brick wall, because I don't know about you, but pretty much every pilot I know has hit that brick wall and came to a point where they just wanted to quit and throw it all away. But you got to get through that. And it's very, very temporary feeling, but it can get frustrating because flying isn't natural to anyone. This is so foreign to all of us. So everyone hits that brick wall, and to just keep persevering. Another tip, I guess, for the industry is just always be networking and let people around you know what your goals are. Aviation is such a unique community where everyone is willing to help everyone. Everyone gives a lending hand for the most part. So if you tell the people that are around you what you're looking to do, you're going to find help. And my last one is to find a mentor. That was most helpful for me, to have a mentor in the industry, especially because I didn't have a family member in it. But even family members can have a biased opinion on what you should do sometimes, and think things that are better for you that may not be. So it's nice to have an unbiased opinion of someone else who cares about you, where you can find a good mentor. I think that's really important. And
I love the first one you gave, because I mean, everyone's going to face that time in aviation where like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's too hard. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. Happened to me. I even took it to the part where I almost didn't even finish all my training. I applied to jobs in Australia to work for Air New Zealand or Air whatever, Qantas and all those airplanes or all those airlines, just because I didn't want to be a pilot anymore. I didn't think I could do it anymore. So I was trying to find a way out, and my way out was Australia. And luckily I didn't get a job, because who knows, I wouldn't be doing this if that was the case. So there's definitely a time you're going to face that path on the road where it gets too hard and you don't think you can do it, but power through it. You can do it. We've all been there and we've all overcome it. So just go for it. Keep going.
For sure. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, Mindy, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it. Like I said earlier, this will be out on Tuesday, so it's going to be exciting, and I'm looking forward to everyone hearing your story.
Sweet. It was fun. Thank you.
Avination, that is a wrap of episode 90 of the Pilot to Pilot podcast. Thank you for listening to today's episode. As I said earlier, please leave a review on iTunes. We have around 435 reviews. I want to try to get to 500 reviews as soon as possible. Maybe do a pretty sweet giveaway once we get up there. But go ahead and leave a review. Check out our website, pilottopilothq.com. And shout out to Bailey Davis, Patreon of the Week. Avination, I hope you have a great day. And as always, happy flying.